remember being on vacation and I checked my emails every 2 minutes and I started answering emails because I thought I was helpful, but I was being the bottleneck without realizing it. You are actually adding complexity here. You're not helpful.
What you just heard was the sound of a founder who doesn't know how to let go. We know that 0 to 1 requires a lot of grit, but from 1 to 10, staying on the front lines isn't just hard work, it's a liability for you and your company. To scale, you have to learn how to fire yourself from the job you love. Today on Skills for Startups, the former CEO of Occlutech, Sabina Bois, joins us to show us exactly how to stop doing this grunt work and start building a strategy. Let's get into it. For startup founders, one of the most critical questions is, how are you going to execute the work that lies before you? What would you say are the most critical factors to ultimately decide what work to outsource, hire for, or do themselves?
Yeah, it's a very good question, and everybody needs to answer this individually. When it comes to the decision outsourcing, hiring, or roll up my sleeves and do it myself, I think three important things are there to consider, which is strengths, time, and resource. So if something doesn't add into those, you should probably outsource it because it's niche or outside the company's real core, like, deep regulatory work. My background is a business background. I'm not a scientist. So that obviously also influences it. If something is really deep in the heart of the business, something that's going to grow with you in your company, you probably much rather bring on somebody that will evolve with the company, someone who's not just filling a role, but is going to become part of the journey. I'm very passionate about having a grip of everything and be dangerous enough in all the different aspects of the company to answer the relevant questions and want to learn more. So you stay close to the vision and feel connected with what you're building. You are the visionary in this company as a founder, but you also need to have your cash flow and your return of investments as a North Star for yourself, particularly in the last years where things have pivoted so much from, poor growth and the future was golden to really profitable businesses that get rewarded. So knowing where the money is going and what it's doing is really key. I don't mind spending money for good people, good projects, innovation, but you need to see the value and that needs to be a driver. So all of this ties back to the bigger goal. And of course, you need to have the consideration of the long-term interest of the shareholders. So it's really about the vision, but also the thoughtful leadership and keeping close alignment. So that real question, what it comes down to is time, resource, and is it of the core of the business when you make a decision if to outsource or not?
Are there certain types of work or categories that typically should be outsourced that a founder shouldn't be doing, or vice versa?
Yeah. So coming back to what we first said, I think the founder really is the glue. And obviously, you are the best advocate for what you're doing, particularly in the first phase. You have the strong belief in the company, in the product, in the business idea. So as a founder, you hold together the vision, the operations. You need to align the stakeholders all around it. And that means a lot of staying hands-on with the things that you define for your business, the product design, the customer experience, the leadership, the strategic decision. And those tasks is really hard to outsource. And you need to stay extremely close because it is tied to the DNA of your company. So on the other side, there are areas that totally make sense to outsource where you hire somebody. It also depends on who you are as a person, like task in legal, IT infrastructure, administrative work, or like me, you need somebody to drive products, the design development. So if the task is not within your area, or if the task is not within the core company identity, you're not uniquely skilled at, then I would say bring the expert that allow you to really bring the impact that is needed for the company. So that brings me always to like, am I the best person to do this? Or am I just doing this because I have a fear of losing control or I'm not on the pulse of everything anymore? But does that really add value? Or am I going to be a bottleneck with this?
That makes a lot of sense. So, how can a founder tell when there's a mismatch between the work itself and who is doing the work?
Yeah, very honestly, this was something I really had to learn the hard way. As the company grows, I instinctively jumped into conversations. And I vividly remember being on vacation and I couldn't put down my phone. And I checked my emails every 2 minutes and I started to answering emails because I thought I was helpful and I wanted to guide. But frankly, in doing so, I was unintentionally increasing the workload and totally slowing down decision making because by the time I answered, people actually already had a solution. So I was being the bottleneck without realizing it. And it was honestly so helpful that the people around me had the guts to stand up and say, look, you are actually adding complexity here. You're not helpful. And they were right, and actually I had a better vacation too. And so that kind of honest feedback is so valuable. And you need to have that trust and respect among the company to be open about these things. And you need to have the self-reflection then to step back. And that's why you need to create this environment with people that are empowered, where open dialogues are welcome, and where there's no ego in the way. So feedback isn't criticized, it's clarity. And so now, these days, I ask myself, do I need to step in here? And why am I doing it? Do I step in here because I'm actually being helpful, or I'm just inserting myself out of a habit?
Absolutely. As a founder, what are some information, advice, or tools that can help me validate my choice, right or wrong?
Yeah, so I think you need a sounding board, people inside, but also outside the company who can challenge you, coming back to building that environment of trust and empowerment. And you need to surround your people, you need to surround yourself with people that are critical with yourself, obviously not all the time, but also empower you, but aren't afraid to say things. And also, if not afraid to step up and say, we have a setup that's not scalable. We need to add people. We need to add a certain resource so that you can have an honest discussion about it. And so these metrics need to be put in place and the structures need to be put in place. It is a task also as a leader and as a founder to kind of do these steps as the company grows, because obviously different segments of company development will have different needs to the CEO or to the founder. And there will be probably a time when you, as a founder, are no longer the right person to lead the company. And so there will be different steps. I truly believe there is something about each person has a sweet spot for leading a company in a certain area. If it's founding, like from a blank piece of paper to growing and scaling, and then there are people that love to work in big companies with a big infrastructure. So you kind of really have to figure out where you belong and where you are, but also have the self-reflection and the metrics and the feedback to then let go of certain pieces.
What does finding a sounding board look like for the small startup? When you have a large company, it seems more like it's built into the structure. But can you talk a little bit more about where to find a sounding board at each of those situations?
Yeah, it's definitely true. Things change over time. And if you're a small company, still try to find your people you're talking to outside as much as possible, because that will give you the honest feedback. I've always found it really interesting to talk to analysts and bankers. That's their business. They have a lot of knowledge in the markets and they know a lot of what's going on with the strategics and what they're looking currently at. So you get a very, very honest feedback, if you like it or not sometimes, but it's very valuable. So I think you just need to realize who are the different stakeholders. I'm not talking shareholders, I'm talking stakeholders. So you want to have the internal stakeholders, you want to talk to the employees, to the board, to shareholders, to KOLs, you want to talk to physicians involved or not involved. So get all of these opinions and then, but also validate them with external feedback, because you could get so much in love with your own idea that you don't realize the market is maybe gone, or it's not as hot as you thought, or it's not as big as you thought. So I think to have also the outside view, they might give you feedback that is actually valuable on the path you're going. And I always found people very open to have a discussion, to spend those 20, 30 minutes to give you the feedback. Look in LinkedIn for some experts, have some analysts and bankers to contact, get some review from the investor side, right? Even if they're not the right investors at this particular point, these conversations, they're very helpful and will take you forward. And then personally, because the founder life and the leader life is a very lonesome life, it is extremely helpful to have somebody to call on, even if it's just unloading of emotions outside the company, but somebody who's still involved in the material to help you and to kind of just think through and get through. So obviously, everything that hasn't been solved by anybody else will land on your table. So you need to solve it. I think it is very important for founders, for leaders, for managers to have this supporting structure and foundation inside and outside the companies and round it up with a mentor.
I think that's great advice. How would you handle two different sounding boards that conflict with one another?
Yeah, in the end, you have to know that it's you taking the decision, right? It's your company, you founder, you want to grow it somewhere and you have an opinion. In the end, take all the advice there is, take all the opinions there is. But the beautiful and the hard part of being a founder and being a leader is then you need to take a decision and run with it. And you have to take a lot of decisions where you will not have complete information all the time and still make an informed decision that will take you and the company further. So you have to be able to work with all the pieces of information and then combine them in what you believe in.
That's a great way to put it. Combining them into what you believe in, I think, is a key piece that's easy to miss sometimes.
It's true. And it comes back to you're the founder, you're the visionary. You are the one that started the company among anybody who could have started it but didn't do it because you believe in it. So it is up to you to take it to the next level.
I know you touched on this a little bit about finding sounding boards, but what's a way that someone who maybe doesn't have very many connections yet, how can they find someone to help them inform these decisions?
I think there are like congresses, podium discussions, banker days, LinkedIn specialists also. Go to other CEOs, talk to them, go to other founders, talk to them because you have a joint story to tell. I would say just take any chance you can to get some ideas and some input because it will give you something. And not everything will be the great revolution, but it will help you on your way. I think making connections to different people with different background is just what you have to do as the founder, as the leader. Nobody else will do that for you. That is a strategic masterpiece that you will have to put together to build the network and run it. And frankly, this was 80% of my time as the CEO to just have those conversations with stakeholders, to keep everybody informed and in the loop, to get the feedback, and then to bring it into action. So it's a major part of the CEO and of the leader work afterwards to also bring that into action, what you built.
Those are some great insights, Sabina, and some great actionable feedback that I think founders can really take away from this podcast today. And thank you again for joining me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Avery. It's been great to be here.
Is there anything else that you'd like to touch on, for any piece of parting knowledge you'd like to instill within us today?
Well, at the end of the day, every founder needs to find their own sweet spot. And for me, it's never been working multi-billion-dollar giants. It's never been the Titanic. It's always been the speedboat. And those companies can feel like, very fast and it can be overwhelming in how they run. But this has been the fun part to me. So I really encourage people to found companies and go on this journey. I love the growing and scaling. Never one day looks like the next. It's going to be super exciting. There are many, many unknowns every day, and you have to solve them as being the founder. But it is so great to be so creative, to have every day something new, to have these endless opportunities, so dynamic and so evolving. It's just very, very powerful. So I totally love it. And I can just recommend going on a founder journey.
If listeners wanted to get in touch with you, how could they do that if they have questions or wanted to chat with you about this further?
Yeah, so I'm absolutely open for any questions or dialogues. Then you can find me on LinkedIn, Sabina Bois, and just contact me. I'm looking forward.